Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to talk about something called spiritualism. Now, when I was introduced to this topic, I thought it was about religion because religion usually has to do with spiritual matters. You know, the spirit of God or your soul or whatever. Are you going to go to heaven after you die or whatever? But spiritualism is slightly different. It's not really about religion. It's more about people who try to communicate with the dead.
Yeah, exactly. I don't consider this religious at all, actually. And some of these activities that we're going to be talking about were discouraged when I was growing up. Some of this stuff is a little scary. But this is also part of history. So we're going to talk about why people perhaps were turning to this practice of speaking for the dead or speaking with the dead. We'll explain more about this as we go through, but it is a part of history and it's actually still around today. So let's get started. We'll read through day 1, Speaking for the Dead, the Rise and Fall of Spiritualism, and then we'll be back. On a cold November evening in 1849, 2 sisters sit at a wooden table before a large crowd of spectators in Rochester, New York. As the oil lamps are dimmed, the crowd quiets. One of the women calls out, "Spirit, are you here with us?" The room is thick with silence until the quiet is shattered by a sharp knocking sound from out of nowhere, as if to say, "Yes, I am here." The Fox sisters seem to have made contact with a spirit from beyond the veil, and their first public séance has begun. Little did anyone at this event know, however, that it would sow the seeds of one of the most significant religious movements of the following century. The Fox sisters' apparent ability to speak with the dead gained them instant fame. As word spread of their gift, interest in communicating with spirits quickly grew, and in the 1850s, the movement gained the name Spiritualism. More mediums began to emerge, and spiritualist activities could soon be found all over the Western world, with people clamoring to witness spirit manifestations for themselves. These range from taking spirit photographs with ghosts in the background to witnessing levitating objects and self-writing messages at seances. The movement attracted many renowned figures, including Arthur Conan Doyle, Thomas Edison, and Pierre and Marie Curie. It was an apt moment for spiritualism to gain popularity. Spiritualist practices seem to provide observable evidence of the soul and the afterlife, blending components of religion and science at a time when the two often clashed. They also provided comfort to grieving families, as they held the prospect of letting them hear from lost loved ones again. Despite condemnation from the Catholic and Anglican churches, spiritualism thrived well into the 20th century. However, a time would soon come when the spirits began to go quiet.
All right, let's talk about the subject for today, Speaking for the Dead, the Rise and Fall of Spiritualism. And so this is a movement that began quite some time ago, and it was all about people who claimed that they could communicate with the dead. Maybe you had some unfinished business with your dead uncle or something like that, and you had to talk to him again to get some things straightened out. Well, maybe you could go to a medium, and then that person could help you communicate with your dead relative. And that's what spiritualism is all about. Those mediums who do try to speak for the dead, at least they try to convey messages from dead people to living people. I guess they still need to exchange information from time to time.
So we're going to go back in history in the first paragraph and kind of paint a scene for you. This is from 1849. It was a cold evening in 1849, and we've got two sisters who are sitting at a wooden table, and they've got a pretty big crowd of spectators, people who are watching or observing these two sisters. It's taking place in Rochester, New York, which is in the state of New York in the upper part of the state, upper north part. As the oil lamps, remember there's no electricity at this point, they've got oil lamps are dimmed. So I guess in order to communicate with dead spirits, you've got to have a dark room. I wonder if they were just trying to, I think they were faking it, but that's my opinion. So the oil lamps are dimmed or the light is reduced, so it's almost dark in that little area where they're sitting, and the crowd quiets. Yeah, I'm sure the crowd got really quiet. There would be kind of a sense of suspense and maybe even be a bit scary, I think, Mm-hmm. And one of the women, this is one of the Fox sisters we're going to be talking about, she calls out, and then we've got quotations, and she's actually talking to the dead spirits that are supposed to come and visit. Spirit, are you here with us? And then the room is thick with silence. It says, until the quiet is shattered by a sharp knocking sound from out of nowhere, as if to say, and they don't hear real words, they just hear that knocking sound, which is supposed to demonstrate, that the spirit is there. I don't think the spirits ever talk to them. I think when they'd have these seances or these spiritualism sort of get-togethers, they would only, be able to kind of sense the thoughts of the dead person coming back. Or like we have here, you'd hear a sound and that would symbolize that the spirit was there. What does shattered mean, Tom?
Shatter. Well, that's what happens when you drop a glass on the floor and little pieces of glass go in all directions. So yeah, to shatter just means to totally destroy something and break it into smaller pieces. But in this particular sense, the quiet is shattered. In other words, it was quiet, but it's no longer quiet anymore. Suddenly it changes and there is a sharp knocking sound from out of nowhere, and it's like they're saying, yes, I am here, although I can't talk to you, I can't use words or language. We can only communicate with these kinds of sounds and things like that. So yes, indeed, they have created this atmosphere. It's dark. They've got the oil lamps, which are dimmed. The crowd gets quiet, and then supposedly somebody answers the question, are you here with us, with a knocking sound, and it comes from out of nowhere, and the Fox sisters seem to have made contact with a spirit from beyond the veil, and their first public seance has begun. So here we've got something called Beyond the Veil. I know a veil is something that a bride wears when she gets married. She wears a veil, which is a piece of fine material, and it will be covering her face. And then when she comes out and meets the groom, then she will move the veil aside so that she can receive the wedding kiss and stuff like that. But in this particular sense, though, it means something slightly different.
Yeah, for religious people out there that believe when we die, we go to heaven, this is a common way to express that. When someone passes away or dies, you'll often hear religious people, at least, express that as saying they passed on beyond the veil, or they passed beyond the veil. There's kind of this, I guess the way they use it is just to kind of symbolize the difference between life here on earth and life that you experience after you die. A lot of religious people, including myself, believe that our spirit goes on to live after we leave this life or this earth and we pass away. So that's beyond the veil, meaning it's a place where people who have already lived their lives on earth go after they die. And we're calling this meeting that the Fox sisters held a seance. It's kind of a weird word. It's also French. That's how it's pronounced, séance. I know they still have séances in places, around the world now. I think they're scary. I would never go because, it's kind of weird. So little did anyone at this event know, and this is back in 1849, however, that it would sow the seeds of one of the most significant religious movements of the following century. So I know back then, at least, it was still considered to be some part of a religious experience. I don't think so. It's not quite the same today, but because a lot of Christian churches discourage seances because there can be some really dark spirits that come. When it means to sow the seeds of something, it just means to actually start planting, caring or cultivating something so it grows, it becomes bigger and bigger, to sow the seeds. You'll often hear people say, that first fight kind of sowed the seeds of our hate towards each other. So to sow the seeds just means to plant and cultivate something that becomes bigger over time.
Yeah, or the boyfriend wrote a romantic poem and sent it to his girlfriend to sow the seeds of love. So that they might get married later on. Who knows? But in this particular case, this movement of the Fox sisters kind of got things going there. It would sow the seeds of this religious movement, and it would continue on up until recent times, and it's still kind of going, but it's not as popular as it used to be, which we'll talk about as our lesson continues. But right now, we're going to take a break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. 今天我们要看的是第12单元，这个标题和死者 The Dead 有关，怎么样为死者讲话，怎么样跟他们沟通。其实这个叫 Spiritualism 就是通灵。曾经它有一阵子是大家非常的热衷的，但是它的 rise and fall， 它的兴跟衰，这就是这一篇文章的内容主旨。好，我们先看它的开始是1849年，这个场景是在纽约，而这里呢就有一群人聚集，其中有一对姐妹，她们呢就在这边要让大家开始感受到通灵的经验。文章的开头有一个字我们要稍微留意一下，他说到在那个场景里面，然后呢油灯就变暗了，然后群众安静下来。这个字 quiet 当然这个字非常简单，我们都把它当形容词的机会多，就表示安静的。可是 quiet 当然也是一个动词哦，像这个地方就是动词的用法，表示安静下来。好，在这个场景里面呢，我们知道他们是在进行通灵这样子的神迹，然后呢，这时候突然就有一个尖锐的敲打声划破了安静，这好像是在说 Yes, I'm here 这个地方 as if to say， 我们知道 as if 就表示仿佛仿若，这个片语啊 as if to say 我们呢其实不妨把它当作一个片语来用啊，也就是说前面这个陈述的过程，这好像是在跟大家讲灵魂就在你的身边。再来在当下呢，就感觉是这对姐妹她们好像跟亡魂联系上了，而这也就是她们当年第一场的 seance 这个字就是指降神会。不过在当时呢，当场参加活动的人其实他们并不太知道，这个就是为下一个世纪最重要的一个宗教运动播下种子。我们这一段整个做引言其实非常的让大家有一种神秘感，我们更想知道到底这个 Fox Sisters 这对姐妹花她们跟王者交谈的这样子的行为在我们今天21世纪里面是怎么样的发展的。不过我们要先看一个文法，也就是 Little did anyone 这个地方的 Little did这个句型上其实它是一个倒装句啊。我们知道倒装句有不同形式的句构啊，那倒装句当然大家最熟的可能就是这一类的 little, seldom, never。 好，像这种否定副词放在句首常常就是有一个倒装的句构，像这个地方 little 就是一个否定副词，它后面的倒装很明显，因为你先要想想它就像一个疑问句一样啊，先用 did， 然后后面呢 anyone 主词反而写在后面，然后 anyone at this event no， 这种写出来就像疑问句型的一样，其实它是一个倒装句。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue with our lesson. We sort of introduced you to the Fox sisters, who had a seance, I guess, way back in 1849, and that's where it all began. I suppose this has been going on for many centuries,
Probably.
People trying to communicate with the dead, but this is when they tried to make it kind of commercial. So the Fox sisters started this movement. We'll later find out that they were frauds, but, they weren't the only ones, and we should also mention the fact that just because the Fox sisters were frauds does not mean that this is something you can take lightly. I think there are still people out there who strongly believe that it is possible to communicate with the dead, but be careful because you might be communicating with an evil spirit or something. So this is something you should not mess with for sure. But let's go on and talk about the Fox sisters here. Their apparent ability to speak with the dead gained them instant fame. They became famous rather quickly because of their apparent ability to speak with the dead. Apparent means it looks like this was the case. People thought that they were really doing it, but I think later on we found out that, they weren't really doing it. It was all a show.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because people who have lost loved ones are in such pain that they're willing to pay a lot of money to someone who supposedly can help them communicate with a dad who has passed away or a mother. Maybe they died at a time when they'd been fighting and all they want to do is say, I love you, I hope you'll forgive me. So it's really kind of an awful thing to actually play on someone's sadness and fear this way. So they got very wealthy through this apparent ability to speak with the dead. And word spread of their gift, and we're putting little quotation marks around it because they really didn't have a real gift, though some seem to have that gift, but they use it for good. They work with police departments and try to find people who have been murdered, perhaps, and, placed somewhere they're lost. The family just wants their body back. There are people that have this gift, but these Fox sisters were, as Tom said, frauds, which means they faked it all. So the word spread, meaning people would say, oh, did you know these two Fox sisters can help you contact your old grandpa or whatever? And the interest in communicating with spirits quickly grew. So in the 1850s, the movement gained the name Spiritualism. That's what they started calling it. And more mediums began to emerge. Medium here isn't a size like small, medium, and large. It's a person that you work through in order to contact somebody else. So you're here, you contact the medium who can talk to the dead, and that way they put you, in touch with someone you couldn't normally contact.
Yeah, I was going to say the word medium is very similar to the word agent. Somebody who does something for you, they kind of represent you. So yes, these are mediums or agents of the dead, basically. And they began to emerge. They began to come out. And they thought, hey, the Fox sisters are making money with this. Hey, we can do this too. We've got the special skills. And of course, the rest is history. This spiritualism movement began to move. They came out, and spiritualist activities could soon be found not only just in the United States, but all over the Western world and Canada and Europe and places like that, with people clamoring to witness spirit manifestations for themselves. So here we've got the word clamor, which usually refers to some kind of loud and obnoxious noise, basically. But as a verb here just means they were getting really excited about this thing and they really wanted to know more about it.
You'll often hear people say, hey, what's that clamor? Which just is a lot of noise. Usually it's noise from kids. But here, people were clamoring to go and take part in these little seances. They were quite excited. Here they were clamoring to witness spirit manifestations for themselves. A manifestation is something that you can see. To manifest just means you show something. Manifestation is the noun form. His fear was manifest by his shaking body. So you could see he was nervous because his body was shaking. So manifestation is to show someone something. These range from taking spirit photographs with ghosts in the background. You still see this today, actually. People will post photos and they'll say, do you see that, that image there? It's very light. It looks like a ghost. I've seen some weird photos, by the way. Or sometimes you could get things to levitate, which means it actually floats in the air. I don't know how they do that, but yeah, I have seen magicians will often do this as a trick. But supposedly it happens in some of these seances. And also, a pen would be picked up by itself with no one holding it and writing messages to family members from the dead spirit, supposedly.
Right, so that's what people reported there, spirit photographs and things like that. This reminds me of an old TV show in Taiwan. I can't remember what it was called, but it's where people get together and they tell ghost stories to each other.
Oh, really?
That was like maybe 20 years ago or so. It was quite popular.
I don't know that one.
But then it was off the air. I think it was Gui Hua Lian Pian or something like that. But in any case, yeah, they had these things. They had spirit photographs and they had experts come out and try to explain what was happening in that photograph and stuff like that. So, if you're familiar with that show, this might help explain things to you with spirit photographs and levitating objects and self-writing messages at these seances, of course, when they get together and try to communicate with the dead. Now, of course, it attracted many renowned figures, a lot of famous people, including Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the writer of the Sherlock Holmes stories. We've got Thomas Edison, the inventor, and Pierre and Marie Curie. I think Marie Curie was a physicist or a chemist or something. She won the Nobel Prize. So, yeah, a lot of supposedly smart people fell for this spiritualism stuff.
Well, I think that just goes to show that they must have seen something that seemed very believable, which I understand. Again, there are a lot of frauds, but there are some people that do have this gift. So it was an apt moment for spiritualism to gain popularity. Apt here just means the perfect time, the most suitable time for something to happen. Sometimes we use it to mean appropriate. Oh, that's, she wore a very apt dress for that interview that she went to. We tend to use suitable more often, though, to be honest, but you should know what this word means. It just means appropriate or suitable, or it can mean you have a tendency to do something. Yeah. Yep. So it's used. She was apt to be late for work every day, for example. So spiritualist practices seem to provide observable evidence of the soul and the afterlife. Afterlife, of course, is after someone dies. Observable just means you can see it.
Like the observable universe, and they were blending components or parts of religion and science at a time when the two often clashed. So yeah, we've always had a clash between religion and science, and so we've got components of both of these things, something from religion, which would be prayer or spirits and things like that, and science would be something else, and so they brought out these components and they blended them together when they seemed to clash, but here in spiritualism they seem to make sense, and they also provided comfort to grieving families as they held the prospect of letting them hear from lost loved ones again. Yeah, they miss their Uncle Chet and they want to talk to him again. There he is. He's got a message to say, hey, I'm okay. I'm living on the other side. Everything's great here. Don't worry about me.
Components, guys, just means parts of things. We also use it to talk about computer components. There are different parts of a computer. Those are components. So parts of something. And also, condemnation is one of our vocab words. It means when you condemn something. So it's just harsh criticism or complete disapproval of something. Typically, it happens in public. If you condemn someone's actions, you say, that's terrible. I can't believe they did that. They should pay. So condemnation, the churches didn't like this. They thought they were playing with fire. As Tom said, evil spirits can come and visit just as easily sometimes as good spirits. So be careful with that.
Yeah, you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, or just stay away away from it entirely. Catholics, of course, that's a Christian church. Anglican, the Anglican Church started in England and is still going strong there. Here it says spiritualism thrived or did very well into the 20th century, which is the 1900s. However, a time would soon come when the spirits began to go quiet. It just isn't as popular these days, although I'm sure it'll come and go. People are always fascinated with the afterlife.
They are indeed, and we'll continue talking about this next time, but right now we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
好，我们提到了 The Fox Sisters， 也就是这一对姐妹花的通灵事件。其实呢，在1850年代，那时候就说这种叫招魂术Spiritualism， 而就有后来呢，现在很多灵媒就一个一个出现，灵媒 mediums， 而且呢还有一些这种所谓的通灵活动。那有时候到这种通灵活动上，这到底是真，到底是假？其实这个见仁见智不过很多知名人物也都去参加了呢。那我们在这边要注意到一个片语的使用，因为他提到了说，在这个招灵活动里面，大家会看到什么？有鬼魂的灵异照片啦，还有一些漂浮的物体啦，等等等。Range from A to B， range 当动词，就是当你要解释说以下的这个范围有什么和什么等等等，就会用到 range from A to B。 接下来下一段就说到了，在那个时候其实这种降神会的做法好像是让我们看到了一些证据表示说灵魂是存在的。可是宗教跟科学这两个方向上其实似乎是互相抵触。不过有一点就是这种招魂术或者是这种通灵的经验，可能呢就帮一些家里因为有人过世，为这些悲痛的家庭提供了某一种的慰藉。所以说起来，其实它也造成了不少的争议。当然宗教界里面包括像天主教 Catholic， 像英国的圣公会 Anglican， 这些教会呢可是非常非常的谴责他们的。我们今天的讲解就到这边，我们下次见。
That's it for today, but please join us again next time when we continue to talk about speaking for the dead, the rise and fall of spiritualism. Please join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
See ya.